Everybody, my name's Chachi, I'm a longtime fighting game player, and I'm here to do a review of these 6 controllers that I own. The reason I'm making this video is because when I was looking for a Fightpad for myself, I found a lot of good videos that talked about basic functionality, kind of the features and build quality of the controllers, with a little bit of gameplay, but as I picked these controllers up, there's quirks with each one that kind of kept me moving on to another one until I found my favorite. So I'm hoping that this video will kind of show you examples of some of the issues I've encountered so you're aware of them before you pick these guys up. So the games I'm going to use are King of Fighters 15, because that's my main game right now, and a little bit of Guilty Gear Strive for specific examples. And we're going to focus on these 4 controllers, the Fightpads. I'm going to touch upon the DualShock 4 and the Xbox One controller, but more so why I moved away, because I start off with these. So before we begin, I want to go over my grip for the controller. So this is how I position my hands. It's pretty standard. So I use the base of my thumb or the middle of my thumb to rock on the D-pad. So this is how I'll do Hadouken, DP, Tatsu, Super, maybe like a shortcut Super like an Ultra in Street Fighter 4 or something. And I use my left triggers for shortcuts if I use them. So yeah, this is my basic hand setup. I don't use the analog and I don't play claw, and I don't really use these buttons too much. So hopefully if you have this specific grip, this video will be most helpful to you. So that's it for the intro. Let's start with the Hori Fighting Commander Octa, the newest controller that I have. I'm just going to quickly touch upon the PS4 DualShock and the Xbox One controller, and instead of a review, it's more why I don't use these, and it's honestly personal preference. So for the PS4 DualShock, it's a great controller, and I'd still be using it if it weren't for like one issue that I can't isolate for some reason. So personally, once out of every maybe like 10 games, I'll hold like down back or try to crouch block on either direction, and for some reason I'll get a down input instead, even though I'm holding down back. And I'm like, this has happened so many times where like I'm actually pressing harder than usual because I don't want to get a down input, and I'll eat a full combo. And it's not only this controller, I've tried multiple DualShocks, and I have no idea why that's happening. I'm pretty sure it's a personal thing because pros use this all the time, but because it happened to me so many times, I use some of the other controllers, and I never experienced that on any of the other controllers. So the Xbox One, this is actually new to me. I'm just borrowing it, so I don't have a lot of time, but I wanted to try it out because I heard the D-pad is amazing, and it is. It feels super responsive and fluid. It just feels nice to use. The buttons are a little stiffer than other controllers for my liking. These space buttons right here, they take a little bit more effort. But the bumpers all feel great. The triggers, I'm not a big fan of triggers, but they do feel good. The only reason I'm not using this, well, for one, I don't own it. I'm just borrowing it. But also, I wish the D-pad was where the analog was, because since I got like kind of smaller hands, when I try to handle all of the triggers, I kind of have to like tilt my hand forward, and it's a little uncomfortable. Even though I could get all my inputs, just for like long play sessions, I feel like it would cause issues for me. And yeah, I don't think it's going to be an issue if you have bigger hands. That's just personal preference. So these 2 controllers are great. It's more of a personal preference thing, and that's just kind of where I'm coming from when I'm reviewing these other controllers. Okay. So the first controller, and pretty much the reason why I'm making this video, is the Hori Fighting Octa. I was excited for this because it was supposed to be my dream controller. I love the Hori Fighting Commander 4, but there's a durability issue, and also the price has skyrocketed on this guy. So this is one of my favorite controllers, but it's probably going to die by the end of the year. And also, if you look on Amazon right now in the US, it went from 40 bucks to 80, so I don't think I'm going to be able to pick up many more of those. So this was supposed to be the replacement. Honestly, it's a good controller. It does a lot of good things. Build quality, fantastic. It's light if you care about that. The micro switch buttons feel great too. And if you look right here, you barely need to press them for them to actuate. Like, you can barely tell in the camera. And the shoulder buttons, they don't use triggers. They're all bumper style, and they use a membrane, but they're very quick and responsive, so I have no complaints there. The analog stick, it's one of the best I've used, but I'm not really an analog stick player, so I don't care too much. It's stiff, unlike a PlayStation analog, so that's a huge plus for me if I were to use something like this. But I'm more concerned about the D-pad. The D-pad, it's elevated on all cardinal directions, left, right, up, and down, and in the center, there's like a divot so you can rest your thumb in there, so it feels very nice. My main complaint is the stiffness of this pad. It's stiffer than the Hori Commander 4, if you're familiar with that. It's very stiff, and you need to play a lot for it to break in. And this actually might be where I'm finding most of my issues with this controller and why I'm not using it anymore, is because of how stiff it is. So if you do like normal inputs like a Hadouken, like Tatsu, like DPs, it comes out really consistently, right? So we'll do a basic combo. Right. But the issue comes in if you need to do anything with a lot of finesse. So if I chose Rock because he has this teleport move, and from that you can do a command grab cancel, and it's quite a difficult like commands, but I can do it pretty well. The issue is if I'm trying to do like some movement or like a block string into that, it gets kind of difficult. And another one of the issues with the stiffness is when I'm pressing down, it works perfectly fine because it's like a pretty easy motion, or like it's easy to put enough strength to register those inputs. But for these like short hops you gotta do in like King of Fighters specifically, I can get them to come out super consistently. Like I flick my thumb to do these like jump inputs, and oftentimes like when I'm trying to just like do movement, like the short hop won't come out, or I need to put like a considerable like mental effort to do the short hop. So you can see right there, I try to do a short hop to the top left, but I just jump like in neutral. And see, again right there. And it, even though like I could probably fix this, it just takes too much effort mentally to kind of like use this controller. I don't think it's worth it, which is why I don't use the controller anymore. For King of Fighters at least. For Street Fighter, I think this is a great controller because you're not going to need to use those jump inputs that often. And the rest of the inputs could come out perfectly fine. But if you're playing King of Fighters, or maybe like an anime game that requires you to do super jumps or a lot of aerial movement, I would have issues with that on this controller. And you know, this is kind of like a known issue with the diagonal inputs in the old Xbox version. They say they solved it with a firmware update, but this is updated and I still have similar issues. And additionally, I was hoping, even if that was still an issue, I'd be able to fix it in the software. So I'm going to show you the software right here. So it's actually got a ton of cool features. You could set up multiple profiles and set up the dead zones for your pad, and also change each one of your inputs here to anything else you want, right? So all of this is fantastic. However, this right here, I was hoping would solve my issues, but it's not the dead zones that are the issue. It's that maybe I don't have the strength to do the diagonal inputs because it takes considerable effort. If anything, I would have to increase these shoulder dead zones even further instead of like reducing these guys. This doesn't achieve what I need it to, and I'll show you what this actually does. So easiest way to illustrate it is if I actually bring them even closer. So let's do the right input. So if you look right here on the right side, you can see the D-pad, right? If I have it set all the way to the right, then if I barely press the right, you can see that it inputs. So here you go. I barely need to press it down and you'll see the right register. If you reduce this, it's not like it emphasizes the diagonals. What this actually does is just create more dead zone for this directional input that I just reduced. So if I press this down, you can see that it's no longer registering the right input. I have to press it down and I have to press harder for it to come out. So that's what that actually does. It doesn't solve my issue. But it can be good for people with a heavy hand that get like mistakes when they're trying to like ride the gate or something, and you need to like de-emphasize one of these guys. In my case, I use a very light touch, and I flick my hand a lot, and I'm not getting these like diagonal inputs, so that's the issue for me. Still a great feature. Honestly, even though that's like my complaint, I don't use this anymore. I'm probably gonna return it. Return or sell. Is because of the D-pad. It's too stiff for my liking. I might just need to put more time, but I didn't have this issue when I had the Fighting Commander 4, as stiff as that controller is. If you're playing Street Fighter, I think this controller is great. Does a lot of good things. However, I have other recommendations that you might want to consider before this one. So yeah, on to the next one. Alright, so the next controller is the Hori Fighting Commander 4. I think we all know this one. If you go to any Fightpad recommendation, like Reddit or like Twitter post, this is number one, right next to the Power A Fightpad. But the Power A Fightpad, I don't know why it's so expensive, so I didn't pick that up. I picked this guy instead, and I love it. It's perfect in my opinion. When you first get this Fightpad, the D-pad is going to be very stiff. At first I didn't like it, but give it some time because it loosens up a lot. And now I can do half circles, I could do like tiger knees, I could do double core circles, super easy. It's buttery smooth. The buttons are about the same as like a PS4 button. If you can think about the responsiveness, it's about the same, just the buttons are larger. The triggers are bumper style. They're very short travel, they're super easy to press, and they don't get in the way if you're just kind of like hovering your fingers up here, which is great. I love these guys too. In terms of features, it's bare bones. You have a toggle for PS4, 3, and PC. You have a turbo button, and then you have the ability to turn these guys into L3 and R3, and that's pretty much it. You get this because you want to play fighting games. So there's not a whole lot more to say. I'll just show you a few combos just so you know that it's like working as intended. Movement is perfectly fine. You don't see that like short hop issue that I was having with the other controllers. Right. Combos all work as intended. I can do elbow into supers perfectly fine. I can do this cross-up command grab thing like fairly easily here, right? And then I could do EX1. That goes into a full combo, right? What else is there? Yeah, I think that's about it. I guess I could show you double half circle forwards with another character, so let's go to Shrimmy. I'll just show you that core circles are not an issue here. Okay, here we go. Right? Super easy. Alright, and then get the super cancel. Yeah, so no issues with inputs. The only issue is, it's funny because when you first get this, the D-pad is so stiff, yet the thing that breaks first is the D-pad, and that's why people have durability issues, is the D-pad gets so loose that you will start dropping inputs. I'm not there yet, but it's already gotten much looser, and I feel like I've got maybe like a few more months in this controller. That's my only complaint, is the D-pad. Everything else is perfect, and if this was cheaper, I would get it more. But right now, this controller is 80 bucks on Amazon, and that's kind of crazy. That's it. Alright, the next one is the Betop Thorn. So, you might be thinking, what is this cheap looking thing? And I thought the same thing, but it's kind of killing. So the reason why I picked this up is because when the Fighting Commander 4 was starting to get loose, the D-pad was starting to get loose, I was looking for alternatives. It was already getting expensive, so I went to the Fight Stick subreddit, and 2 people out of the entire subreddit recommended this. And I looked it up, I'm like, what is this cheap looking thing? But it was only 25 bucks, so why not? I picked it up from AliExpress. And you know what? It's pretty good. So it's a Sega Saturn style controller. This D-pad is on a rocker, sorry, on a pivot, and it rocks that pivot to get your directional inputs, which makes like complex movements like half circles or like quarter circle back half circles super fluid. I think that's a highlight of this controller. The buttons, fairly solid. If you can think of like an Xbox controller, it's a little less stiff than that. The triggers are very snappy. They require a little bit more force than I'm used to activate, but that's not bad. It just means you'll have like less accidental inputs. For features, bare bones. You have a turbo button. You have the ability to turn this from a D-pad input to a left stick input. You have the ability to change these to L3 and R3, and that's all done on the back using these switches. And there is one caveat to this controller that might be a deal breaker. It's compatible with PC, it's compatible with Android, and it's compatible for PS3, so it's a whole generation behind. So if you want to play with this in tournaments or like on PS4, you'll need a bricks converter. Outside of that, oh okay, one more thing. It comes with this D-pad like replacement where you have like dedicated like left, right, up, and downs instead of having this like more disc shape. So you can see that right here. It's like D-pad, and there's like divots where you could like rest your finger for the directional or diagonal inputs. I'm not a big fan because it is pivot style. It just feels kind of off. I like to rock my thumb when I'm using this controller. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Oh, one thing is actually, so this is Sega Standard style, but the pivot is fairly loose. So that might take a little getting used to because your fingers like really glide and like swing that pivot around, but the inputs are very accurate. So it's just like a learning curve. So I'll try moving around a little bit. Right. Yeah, no issues with complex movements there. Right, I could do that mix-up really easily. Yeah. And in terms of movement, I rarely have issues. So run, right, hop back. Yeah, so you can see that the D-pad is like really swinging around here. Like, you see how much like it's shifting when I'm like doing these inputs. So this might be a deal breaker for some people that don't like the Sega Saturn style and they don't like it loose. However, it just took like a little bit of learning, and this is actually one of my favorite pads. The only quirk I found with this pad is after maybe 3 months of use, if I do extremely quick like half circle inputs, it sometimes drops the down input. So if I do like a half circle forward, it'll drop it down. If the game is generous, like it won't matter. Like if I just do a normal command grab like this, but if I do double, so you can see right there, you see that? So the first one came out perfect. The second one, the down input missed. And for Sharou Super, that down input matters. It won't come out if you don't get that down input. So this combo right here, I'll drop sometimes just because I'm doing this input too fast and I won't get that down input. You can see it right there too. I just did it again after I inputted the super command. I didn't get the down input, and it doesn't sound like a big issue unless the game requires you to get that input, right? So in Guilty Gear, I play Baiken, and when you do a Tiger Knee Hozansen, the like circular like aerial DP move, you need the forward input to get the Tiger Knee version in. And if I do a really quick Tiger Knee, sometimes I won't get that right input before I hit forward. So let me, yeah, you see that? So I did that very quickly, and then I didn't get the forward. And this only started happening recently. So again, there is a durability concern, and you might get something like that happening. When it's working well, I love this controller, but once, you know, it gets old, you might be encountering the same issues that I'm encountering. But yeah, that's it for this guy. I wanted to bring up 2 more caveats that I forgot to mention for the Betop Thorn. So the first one is for Tekken. I don't think this pad is ideal for it, mainly because you can like press a direction quite far after you've actually put the input in, and getting back to neutral, it's quick, but I feel like it's a little ambiguous. So playing characters like Mishima's feel a little weird. It's still perfectly fine if you can get over that. I think it's a great controller still, even if you play Tekken. And the other one was because of the rocker style, and also because it's so sensitive, I've had issues playing Ryo with this controller because part of his game plan is to convert any aerial hit to this machine gun punch right here. And that input is right, left, right. And due to its sensitivity, I've gotten kind of this super very frequently because I'm doing like a dash in, jump in into like a move, and I do right, left, right, and then I'll get the command for like a double half scroll forward instead because I'm just trying to go so fast. So yeah, those are, see, like right there. Those are my only 2 caveats. If you're playing Ryo specifically, because not many characters have that input, you'll run into this issue, and Tekken might feel a little weird. Yeah, really weird quirk. You're not going to experience this with any other character, really, mainly Ryo, so yeah. I just want to quickly go over doing Behemoth Typhoons on this controller, because I think it's built for Gold Lewis. The D-pad is so loose that you can do all the Behemoth Typhoons super easily. So you can see right here, I can do the sweeping upward Behemoth Typhoons really easily from neutral, and I can even do it from running here. See that? So you can do running overhead version into that one, and you'll see that I can do all the other ones just as easily. And I'll still need a buffer for these guys, but they'll just come out just fine. So no issues. So I'll, you know, move around and then do some Behemoth Typhoon. I'm dropping it a little bit. There you go. Yeah, so it comes out just fine. Okay, up last is the Razer Raion. So I was kind of surprised by this controller. I didn't think I like it because when I first found out about the Razer Raion, everyone talked shit on the D-pad because it didn't have a pivot in the center. So you'd be able to kind of press the D-pad in and hit every single direction at once, and it caused so many issues with inputs. But since then, Razer actually put a pivot in all the latest versions of the Raion. So if you buy it new, there's a pivot in there. But the thing is, they didn't tell anybody, or they don't say anything about it in like the product details. So I didn't find out about it until I saw a Twitter post just randomly talking about it. And I picked this up for like 30 bucks used, and I was lucky enough to get that pivot. Since then, this D-pad is actually my favorite out of all the Fightpads that I use. I guess we'll go into build quality. So the case itself is okay. It doesn't feel as good as the Hori Fighting Commander Octa, but the D-pad is way different. So it's actually using mechanical switches for all the directional inputs. It's a Sega Saturn style kind of D-pad where there's a pivot in the center, and then you're moving the D-pad on that pivot to hit these switches. And because it's using that rocking kind of like disc style D-pad, half circle inputs are super clean, but unlike the Betop Thorn that we talked about, the D-pad has enough stiffness where you don't get accidental inputs. So I would say it's a little stiffer than a PlayStation 4 D-pad, and obviously it's clickier and it feels super nice because of that. The buttons, they use mechanical switches, but they're linear. So some people describe it as mushy feeling because there's no feedback until you actually, you know, hit the base of the controller. So I don't have an issue with it, but some people might think this feels a little mushy. But in terms of usability, at least it's very quick and responsive. The triggers, they're kind of interesting. They're all buttons, so they're not, none of these are kind of like a trigger style shoulder button. However, what's nice about these guys is that they're very shallow, and they kind of ride the contours of the controller. And why this is good is because sometimes on at least the Fighting Commander Octa, when I'm playing, as I'm really getting into the game, sometimes I'll press these shoulder buttons by mistake as I'm doing like motion inputs, so you can see my fingers moving. But because these are so like recessed, I don't actually hit these unless I really intend to. And it's such a smart little design that I didn't even think about until I started using this. In terms of other cool features, it's got a headphone jack. Not all controllers have that, so it's great for tournaments. It has this touchpad. Again, not a lot of Fightpads have that. You have the ability to turn these guys to L3 and R3. And on the back, you can switch to PC and PS4. These two buttons here, if you click them together, you can actually go to tournament mode, and it disables your start, select, and PlayStation buttons, and I think the touchpad too. And these two buttons control the microphone or headphone that you attach here. So yeah, it's a decked out Fightpad. So that's pretty much it for features. I'm just gonna do some combos. So I chose Rio because his combo actually covers all the issues that I've had with the other controllers. So he has a Mac Punch, right? This guy right here. And on the Betop Thorn, it's too sensitive, so I'll sometimes get super inputs. I don't get that here. Rio has a lot of core circle back, and then half circle forward inputs. So we covered that in his combos, and also just half circles in general are super easy on this as well. So I'll show you general movement. So I don't have any issues moving on this controller. So you can see I'm moving just fine. Short hops coming out, full hops, right? Comes out super easily. I could do Hadouken inputs super easily, DPs super easy as well, and then we'll go to the other side. No issues here. Now we'll do a DP into super cancel, comes out just fine, right? What else? Oh, I guess we'll do core circle back into half circle forward. Oh wait, is it kicks? I forget. Oh sorry, it's a core circle forward and half circle back. So we'll do those a few times. See that? Very little issues there, and then I'll show you the combo that kind of brings it all together. There you go, see? So yeah, this is one of my favorite controllers right now. I'm going to move over to Guilty Gear Strive. I just want to show you how Behemoth Typhoons on Gold Lewis work on this controller, because I think it's great for half circle inputs. And also, maybe we'll go over Tiger Knees with Biken, so I'll be right back. Alright, I just want to show you that you can do Behemoth Typhoons easily on this style controller. I want to show you specifically the right to left, like upward sweeping Behemoth Typhoons from neutral. So this motion can be kind of hard depending on the controller, but you can see that I'm doing it just fine even while running. I can do this pretty consistently. I can do the other guys just fine. Oh, dropped it there. But yeah, you can do them just fine. And we'll just do a quick combo. It's been a little while, so I might not remember these guys. Okay, yeah. Not a great combo, but you can see what I'm talking about. It's a great controller for any type of sweeping motion like that. And let me switch to Biken real quick, and then we'll just show you that you can do Tiger Knees easily on this too. So if you remember, on the Betop Thorn, I had some issues with Tiger Knees not registering because I wouldn't register the middle input as I go to my Tiger Knee, so I wouldn't get the right input. It would whiff, and then I would jump, and then I would just drop my Tiger Knee input. But I don't have any of that issues here. It comes out super consistently, right? And let's see if we could do a combo here. There you go. So yeah, no issues whatsoever. Okay, so we're at the end of the video. I want to thank you for sticking around this long. I want to make some recommendations for these controllers, and I hope my video kind of gave you some insight on the quirks of each one of these and gave you confidence in your buying purchase, or give you like more insight before you buy one of these guys. So in terms of recommendations, first off is a Hori Fighting Commander 4. You know, everyone recommends this one, I do too. I think it's just a very solid controller, and I think it's gold standard. It doesn't do anything fancy, but it does everything you want. The D-pad has the right amount of firmness, the buttons are great, and the only complaint I have is the durability of the controller, because it will eventually die just because of how the D-pad is made. But outside of that, this is the best performing Fightpad out of this bunch right here. But right next to it is a Razer Raion. This is currently my favorite controller, but it's with the caveat that you get the latest version, or you mod an old Raion to get a pivot in there. Because without it, I think I would hate the D-pad, but with it, I think it's one of the best Sega Saturn style D-pads out there. Some people might not like the buttons because they're a little mushy feeling, but outside of that, I have very little complaints about this guy, and it does everything right for my needs. So if I were to give these a letter rating, I would say this is an A. The only mark that I would take off is for durability, and I would say this is an A- as long as you get the right version, or you mod it. So next up, I want to put all of these three on the same tier. Honestly, if you have a PS4 controller or an Xbox One controller at home, you're probably not going to get that much benefit from moving to a lot of the other Fightpads out there. These are already very solid controllers for fighting games, and you get the additional benefit of, you know, having analog sticks and having a normal, you know, controller feel, so you can play other games at home. So it's not really a big deal for you to like move to another Fightpad, unless you're really serious about it or you're trying to look for a specific thing. The reason I put this on the same tier is because if you're looking for entry-level Sega Saturn style D-pad controller, Fightpad, I think this is a great option, but it's very specific because the D-pad is quite loose, so it might not be for everyone. That's my only hesitancy for recommending this, is because this D-pad's not going to be for everyone. But outside of that, it's cheap. It's like 25 bucks, and everything else works great. So I would put these all on the B tier, maybe like B- here, because there's like a few quirks with the D-pad, but that's it. This I would put at like a C tier, unfortunately. I was really looking forward to this. In terms of build quality, it's fantastic. I love the buttons, but there's so many problems with the D-pad, and just like other small like annoyances, because like the analog stick is too close to the D-pad, and also these guys, although the shoulder buttons feel nice, they're actually quite high and sensitive. So sometimes like when I'm like playing and I'm just like kind of, my finger sometimes twitches as I'm like trying to do an input, I'll press these guys by mistake and I'll get a misinput. And you know, I already talked about it, but the D-pad is super stiff and I get a lot of dropped inputs. However, it's kind of hard to say for people with heavier hands, or people that really press hard on their D-pad. It might still work for some people. It might be your dream D-pad. It doesn't work for me. If you're gonna get this, I think you should come with that mindset in mind. It might be better for players that play Street Fighter or Tekken, where it's kind of more about the footsie game, not a lot of jumping involved. I still think there's a lot of good things about this, but for me, after I played for a few days, I haven't gone back to it. I played it until I broke the D-pad in a little bit more, because I wanted to get a fair chance. But even after I broke in a little bit more, it just wasn't for me. Compared to these other options, you just got better stuff out there. So yeah, that's it. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll catch you later. Bye.